Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Marina Bosques counted all the money in the cash register once again, closed her shift, quickly cleaned up the grocery shop where she worked as a sales clerk in the bakery section, and hurried home. She had a very important day tomorrow. The girl would meet the parents of Sergio, her fiancé. He was a few years older than Marina. He had recently turned 25, while Marina had just celebrated her 21st birthday last month. Despite the age difference, the couple was crazy about each other. And the fact that her fiancé is not only older but also had time to get a college degree in economics made the man in Marina's eyes even more attractive. The young man immediately told his beloved that he was very rich. His parents were hereditary investors, and therefore Sergio's family not only had a certain cultural status in secular society but also a number of advantages related to the realization of profitable deals in the financial market. And it really frightened Marina. She had never before communicated with people of such a high social level. She had only a high school education, a grado medio, and parents who drank themselves to death. 3 years ago, Marina's father and mother died of methanol poisoning. They had bought cheap vodka from someone they knew, and it turned out to be counterfeit. Marina had just turned 18 at the time. The tragic news caught her right in the middle of her class at the culinary school, where she had enrolled in hopes to become a good chef in some decent cafe in the future. A neighbor called and said she came to their house to ask for a cauldron to make pilaf for her family. The door to their house was open and inside. "The ambulance is already here, Marina," the neighbor told her sorrowfully. When the doctor examined them, he immediately said, "It was the counterfeit vodka that killed your mother and father. Why did they take it from that dealer? They know he sells all kinds of poisonous crap." It was not that the girl was shocked. She knew that such a thing could happen sooner or later, considering her parents' way of life. But you can never be prepared for something like that. Besides, despite her parents' drunkenness, she loved them anyway. "Marga, how could it be?" Marina shouted into the phone, "I visited them just this morning, and everything was fine." A deep sad sigh was heard on the other end of the phone line. "Well, that's the way it is. Who knows when we'll all die? Apparently, God decided that your mother and father have had enough time in this world." At that time, Marina had already been living in the dormitorio for a year. She didn't want to be constantly in the atmosphere of alcoholic fumes and to bother her father and mother, so they could live the way they wanted to. The daughter realized that she could not change them, and she had suffered a lot because of her parents. For as long as she could remember, poverty followed her everywhere. Sometimes she did not have enough money for food or even for everyday needs. Sometimes Marina had nothing to wear to school because her shoes wore out to the point that the soles simply flew off of her shoes or cheap sneakers bought at a flea market. "Mom, my shoes are worn out again," the girl whimpered to her always drunk mother. "So what? I told you many times, be careful with your shoes. You already have nothing to wear. You have already torn the last skirt down to the holes again." Marina did not protest, because her mother's no always meant no. Although the last time they bought new clothes for the girl was almost 3 years ago, and most of it was simply too small for her. She knew from experience, it was better not to make her mother angry in such matters. Still, sometimes the girl took a risk. "Mom, I have to go to school barefoot. Please give me some money for new shoes. I'll buy the cheapest shoes. Just to go to school, I promise." "No way." Prudentia looked at her daughter threateningly. "We have no food for tonight in the fridge and have nothing to eat, and you want money. By the way, while we're talking about it, did you have time to take the bottles for recycling and get the money?" Marina lowered her eyes. She was afraid to confess to her mother that instead of dragging a heavy bag of empty bottles to the recycling station, she went to the park with her friends in the morning to feed the ducks. Marina hid the bottles safely in a secluded alley, right next to the garbage cans. Que significa eso de no entrego? Prudentia got angry when her daughter told her the truth. Marina was not good at lying, and she didn't think it was right. "And you still have some claims for me? Go to the place where you left the bag, now." and come home in 20 minutes with the money. Otherwise, you won't go to school anymore, you little brat." Marina cried bitterly, tying her torn shoes with duct tape and old shoelaces, and then wandered sadly toward the garbage dump to fulfill her mother's wishes. At the same time, the girl has always enjoyed studying and demonstrated good abilities in biology and physics, but Marina's greatest passion has always been cooking. The girl eagerly awaited cooking classes every week so that she could practice cooking different types of food. Most of all, she liked to cook potato cutlets and homemade cakes. At home, she always tried to repeat what she had learned at school if there was any food in the fridge. From time to time, the family starved for several days because Marina's parents drank everything away, up to the last penny. And yet, the girl's mother still managed to get a part-time job at the local store, and her father worked rare shifts as a loader at the nearby grocery supermarket. After finishing school, the girl immediately applied to the culinary school. Marina passed the entrance exams without much trouble and got a small room in the dormitory, where she immediately moved in. From time to time, she visited her good-for-nothing parents because she loved them and because she felt sorry for her mother and father, who had ruined their lives in such a stupid way. After a modest funeral, Marina returned to her parents' house. Although she hadn't been here for a year, almost nothing had changed during that time. Dirt and disorder still prevailed around, except that it only got worse. While she had been living with her parents, she had tried to keep the house clean somehow, especially since the house itself looked pretty good compared to all those old village houses. The Bosques house was a solid building, as they say, made for centuries. The stone walls made it almost impervious to the harsh cold in winter, but also provided a soothing coolness on the hot summer days. The terrace and summer kitchen were crying out to be cleaned up. The dilapidated rooms needed a thorough renovation. And it would have been reasonable to invite guests there and organize normal dinners and parties at home, but not long drunken nights, at the end of which almost none of the guests remembered who they were and what their names were. Unfortunately, Marina's parents had only used a couple of rooms on the first floor and a small kitchen at the farthest end of the house. As a result, the second floor and most of the rooms were empty, and Marina was too young and inexperienced in construction matters to start a thorough renovation of the house. She wondered more than once how her penniless mother and father could find the money to build such a large house. They had never been sober, they had been drinking all the time, they were broke, and they had never told their daughter about their past. All the girl could do when she returned from the students' dormitorio was to throw away the garbage and the remains of the cursed vodka that had killed her parents. The police told her straight away that no one would deal with a case of poisoning heavy drinkers. There was no time. And everything is already clear in this case. So the upset Marina had no choice but to return to her usual life. After finishing culinary school, the girl realized it would not be as easy to find her dream job as she thought it would be. No one wanted to hire a young girl with no experience for the position of chef. At job interviews, they kept offering her the same thing. Either go somewhere else to get some experience. I wonder where, she thought to herself. Or accept the employer's conditions. But in that case, Marina could only expect to be a dishwasher, a waitress, or at the very least, a helper in the kitchen helping real chefs cut and wash vegetables and fruit for cooking. But one day she was lucky, she came to a small pastry cafe on the other side of the city. They were looking for pastry chefs. So she decided to try her luck one last time. What if they hire her? She decided that if this time she would be disappointed, she would probably have to be a waitress for a while. But to her surprise, the owner of the cafe liked the way she worked. But she couldn't hire her right away. According to our rules, any employee should have experience in baking for at least 6 months, the owner of the pastry shop explained. I see that you really are a very talented cook, so I want to give you a chance. I can't hire you as a pastry chef yet, but I can hire you as a bakery sales clerk in our branded shop. You'll have a chance to work, to see what's going on here, and can swap shifts with our girls from the cafe. They'll show you everything in the kitchen. And then, maybe, you'll join us in the cafe, but as a chef. Consider it your additional training. What do you think? Marina was incredibly happy and agreed right away. Finally, at least one of the employers took her seriously. So after a couple of days, she started her first shift. Marina Bosques enjoyed her job because she was not only selling fresh pastries of the best quality, but at the same time she was learning from the best employees' pastry shop. She was told straight away that learning a new profession would not be a quick process. Marina had to learn all the details of making various pies and cakes, but eventually she can become an excellent pastry chef. And she didn't mind, so for the third year now she was patiently studying all kinds of technical charts of meals and preparing to take the final culinary exam. The owner of this business will personally test Marina's knowledge. Marina met Sergio by chance. He simply came into their shop and asked to choose the most delicious cakes for his coffee. Here, try the cherry cupcakes. They are very delicious, it literally melts in your mouth. Marina was telling him about their goods, and there is a lot of cherry inside. We use only first-class homemade cherry jam, no chemicals or flavor enhancers. Very interesting, the young man responded smiling. He was examining the display case with the pastries. You advertised these muffins to me so well, it would be foolish not to try them. I'll take a couple of them. The guy asked and then paid with his bank card. It's strange that such a beautiful and charming girl like you works as a clerk, the young buyer said suddenly. I think you would be more suitable as a sales assistant in some luxury jewelry store. Marina didn't know where to hide from the Bacorno. After all, she didn't hear such compliments every day. Moreover, the young man standing in front of her had both an attractive appearance and a unique charisma. His smile made Marina feel warm at heart. Oh, you exaggerate, she whispered, blushing. I am as far from the jewelry store as from the moon, but I can tell you a lot about muffins and sandwiches. I love cooking, and I work here because I want to be a pastry chef. In this case, I want to be a part of making your dream come true, the guy replied with a smile. I'll come here every day from now on and buy something from this fantastic variety. Only I want to know your name and working hours so you can advise me on what to buy. That's how they met. Marina introduced herself and found out that the young man's name was Sergio and that he worked as an assistant to a senior manager at a big media company, a branch of which happened to be located in their city. Sergio kept his promise and began to visit the cafe regularly on the days Marina worked there. The young man would always leave with a bag full of all kinds of sweets and pastries. A couple of weeks later, the unusual customer decided to ask Marina out on a date. The girl was surprised at what was happening but agreed. She wanted to get to know the pleasant young man who expressed such a great interest in her. Besides, Marina believed in pure and sincere love. At heart, the girl was always a very romantic and sensitive person, and for her Sergio was like a knight from a fairy tale. So she felt like a real Cinderella in some way. After 3 months of passionate and tender romance, Sergio asked Marina to meet his parents. Marina was not used to communicating with people from high society, so she was really scared. Sergio, maybe we should not be in such a hurry? She asked him, you never know how things may turn out in life. I think your parents will be more pleased to know that their son is dating a professional pastry chef rather than an ordinary cake seller. Instead of answering, the man kissed his sweetheart on the cheek and gently brushed her long golden bangs away from her forehead. My parents are progressive people. They're rich for a reason. And they already know that my girlfriend comes from a simple, modest family. It's enough for them that you make money honestly, don't cheat, and don't break the law. They don't care about anything else. They'll accept my choice, you'll see. Marina would like to believe the words of her fiancé, but the girl still had some doubts. Oh, what if they just don't like me? I have not even studied etiquette. I don't know how to eat oysters or anything like that. Sergio laughed softly and merrily, which made Marina laugh, too. First of all, you don't have to worry about oysters. They will definitely not be on our menu. Second, why do you have such stereotypical views? Yes, they're high society, but they're not pompous or prudish at all. Cultured, yes, but completely devoid of any kind of primness. You see, you even talk in such an unusual way. exquisite, ornate. No, Sergio, I'm afraid I simply can't reach your and your parents' level. Marina shook her head negatively and covered her face with her hands. Suddenly she felt very ashamed of herself for some reason. She felt completely uneducated. Hey, everything will be fine. Calm down, dear, Sergio assured her, taking her hands away from her face and covering them with light kisses. Just be yourself, let them see why I fell in love with you. And cook something tasty for dinner. Surprise them with your culinary skills, he suggested. It will be more than enough. The girl nodded slowly, even though she was very nervous. And so, the day X came. The day before Marina had time to go to the store after her shift at the pastry shop and to buy 2 bags of groceries, she was going to cook a dinner the next day. Together with Sergio, they decided that the dinner would take place at the girl's place. Let them see that she lives in a good house, even though it's not a luxury palace. Marina told her fiancé that her parents had suffered from alcoholism their entire lives. Fortunately, the young man reacted to this quite calmly. Stop blaming yourself for their fate, Marina, the man told her. You are not them. And you should not be ashamed of your past. Marina was deeply touched by Sergio's understanding because she was afraid that he would leave her if he knew the truth about her relatives. However, the nobility of the young financier convinced her once again that she had made the right choice. But don't tell your parents about it yet, she asked her fiancé. I don't want to tell such sensitive information right away. I will tell them everything, but later. Let them at least try to see something good in me. The girl could not stop worrying. Sergio laughed and promised her that he would do as she asked. And this little thing gave Marina a little confidence. That day, Marina cleaned every room of the house to a shine. She polished the floors and tile in the kitchen and cooked a delicious 3-course dinner and dessert. She was willing to do anything to impress her fiancé's parents. Finally, the doorbell rang. Knock, knock, here we are, Sergio said cheerfully, appearing on the threshold of Marina's house. The young man was holding a huge bouquet of white roses. His parents were standing next to him. The elderly people smiled and looked at Marina in a slightly ingratiating manner. Marina, this is Valerio Carmona, my father. And this is Irene Carmona, my dear mother. Then he gave her flowers with a smile. Welcome, she said friendly. Please come into the living room, sit down at the table, and I'll bring aperitivos. Los aperitivos son algo bueno, Sergio's father suddenly said as the elderly couple entered the house. Marina looked at Valerio Carmona with surprise, and immediately, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Sergio giving his father a displeased look. I just wanted to say that the drive was so exhausting. We would be happy to have something to eat, the elderly man added instantly. Besides, Sergio has told us so much about your cooking skills. At this moment his wife pulled her husband by the sleeve. Giving her son's fiancé a charming smile, Irene Carmona said, Excuse us, Marina. We're really a bit tired, and Valerio loves to eat, he's such a gourmand. Marina was a little confused by the strange behavior of Sergio's parents, but she only smiled politely at the guests and then hurried to the kitchen. As it turned out, she had cooked so much delicious food not in vain. Sergio bought the wine himself, so there was no need for a girl to take care of the alcohol. While Marina was serving the shrimp salad in elegant bowls, she suddenly had an unpleasant thought. Valerio Carmona's face seemed strangely familiar to her, except that she could not yet figure out where they might have crossed paths before. The only thing she knew for sure was that it was not a pleasant encounter. Contrary to Marina's image of hereditary financiers, Sergio's parents looked not only completely devoid of any aristocratism but even the opposite, too simple, as if they had recently moved from the village to the city and now didn't know how to behave. She went back to the guests and placed a bowl in front of each of them, immersed in her own thoughts. Marina, honey, is that shrimp? Sergio's mother asked in amazement. Well, yes, I added them to the salad for juiciness, she explained. Don't worry, everything is fresh. Everybody knows me at the market. I have been buying here since my childhood. They have never sold anything bad." With a sinking heart, Irene picked up one shrimp on a fork and then slowly and savourably put it into her mouth, squeezing her eyes shut in pleasure. After a second, a contented moan of pleasure came from her belly. Really fresh." The lady sincerely admired the salad. "Well, let's drink a glass of wine to the health of the young couple," Sergio's father said, rubbing his hands together with anticipation. At that moment, Marina saw a gleam in his eyes that was so painfully familiar, exactly the same way her parents' eyes lit up at the sight of alcohol. But how could that be? Señorita Vasquez looked closely at the fiancé's parents. Yes, the elderly Carmona couple looked neat and clean, but nothing more. Although the girl had no money for expensive clothes, she knew what a good cashmere coat or a luxurious man's watch must have looked like, and people of this rank at least must have high-quality shoes. However, Sergio's father and mother were dressed in basic cheap clothes. Marina saw it quite clearly. She herself bought clothes in such stores, therefore she immediately recognized the familiar to her eyes and wallet brands. On the other hand, she thought, maybe I exaggerated. Maybe they deliberately dressed this way today so as not to make me feel uncomfortable with their luxury and glamour. They say that the richest people always dress as modestly as possible so as not to attract unnecessary attention to themselves, but in this case, what about their weird behavior? "Valerio, at least eat something, otherwise, you will get drunk quickly." Sergio's mother looked reproachfully at her husband. "Why are you embarrassing us in front of our son's girlfriend?" By this time, Valerio already had 2 glasses of wine and was now relaxing in his chair. His face was flushed and his eyes glistened wetly. Suddenly, he began to hiccup loudly. It was like an electric shock. She instantly remembered where she'd seen her boyfriend's father before. A week ago, shortly before Sergio suggested the idea of introducing her to his parents, a very specific customer had come into her pastry shop. He was an elderly homeless man, severely beaten by life and clearly not looking forward to the new day. He wanted to buy a cheese sandwich, the cheapest one available. Except that it was short of change. "Oh, darling, forgive me, I'm an old fool, I don't have enough money for a sandwich." The homeless man was making excuses, and there were tears in his eyes. It seemed that the man had not eaten for days. The poor man kept counting the coins in his dirty hand over and over again, causing the girl a spontaneous attack of compassion. Marina ended up putting 3 sandwiches in the bag for the elderly vagabundo: cheese, ham, and mushroom sandwiches with spinach. Who knows when he'll be able to eat again? "Here, take it," she held out the bag. "Take it, you don't need to pay, just eat it." She reassured the old man, seeing the mix of anxiety and gratitude on his face. "Is it all for me?" the old man asked in disbelief. "Sure, for you," the seller nodded. With tears in his eyes, the beggar thanked Marina and hurried out of the shop. Maybe he was afraid she would change her mind and ask for the sandwiches back. Marina paid out of her own pocket at the time, but she didn't regret it. She could understand those who had nothing to eat for a long time. Now the homeless man was sitting right in front of her. Except he was clean, well-dressed, and with a ridiculous reddish wig on his small head. Marina realized Valerio was wearing a wig almost as soon as she saw him. It contrasted too much with the man's skin tone. And she remembered that visit of the beggar to the pastry shop. The old man's head was decorated with a big bald spot. It was impossible to mistake or forget such a thing. That stuck in the girl's memory. Her intuition was telling her that there was something wrong with the 2 spouses for a reason. Meanwhile, Sergio snatched a bottle of wine from his father almost by force and put it under the table. Lijos del Pecado. His eyes were angry and extremely irritated. Valerio's behavior clearly did not please him. "Stop it, father. Stop it now." Sergio hissed through his teeth. "We still have a long drive home. And don't you dare start yelling again." "What's going on?" Marina asked. "Sergio, let your father have some more wine if he feels like it. You're driving today anyway." Yeah, Sergio, don't be such a cheapskate. Pour me and your Irene Carmona some more wine. Valerio Carmona said with a slightly slurred tongue. El hombre apartaba la mirada cada vez que Marina se detenía en el más de 2 segundos. No, the girl thought to herself. It was definitely him. Valerio was getting nervous, and at this point even Marina found it difficult to say why. Because he recognized the generous girl who had given him a bag of sandwiches, or because his son had deprived him of the opportunity to drink at someone else's expense. Don't worry, Marina told him, at the same time looking questioningly at her beloved. Would you like me to bring you calzone with meat? It's homemade. I just made them this morning. Valerio muttered something in response, and Marina got up from her chair. She wanted to take the salad plate from the man. Irene still couldn't stop eating her portion of shrimp salad, taking a sip of wine from her glass from time to time. As Marina lifted the plate over the man's head, she moved her hand through his hair. In the same second, the big fluffy wig fell to the wooden floor of the living room with a quiet rustle, exposing a familiar bald spot. Oh, Valerio Carmona, I'm sorry. I'm so clumsy, the young lady exclaimed, and she looked the homeless man straight in the eyes. Sergio's father froze in fear and shame. He had no idea what to do and what to say to his alleged daughter-in-law. As for Sergio himself, his face turned red. A large vein swelled up on his forehead. For a moment Marina even feared for the old man. His son looked at him with such hatred. It seemed that Sergio would burn his father to the ground with his fierce stare. Marina had never seen her fiancé like that. And what she saw alarmed and intrigued her. For several long seconds, there was a dead silence in the living room. Then Irene suddenly managed to defuse the situation. The woman began to smile and chirp like a little bird, caught stealing breadcrumbs. Oh, Valerio. That's okay, pick up your wig quickly. Can't you see how you embarrassed the girl? Sergio's mother briskly approached her husband and, picking up the artificial hair in her hands, deftly put it back on her husband's head. That's better. She fussed over the elderly beggar. Damn manufacturers. They started to make wigs 2 sizes bigger. Jesus, it's so embarrassing. Ugh. Irene laughed awkwardly, but Marina pretended to be really sorry for her embarrassing mistake. The rest of the night was uneventful. Sergio's mother tried to flood Marina with questions about her life, her favorite hobbies, and her job. One way or another, she tried to distract her from Sergio's silent fight with Valerio. He and Sergio stared at each other like a wolf at a hare. Marina was completely confused by what was going on. Leaving the house with his parents, Sergio promised her he would come back tomorrow. Marina only pursed her lips. It's too strange, Sergio spoke to her as if making excuses. Don't think about it. They were working on a very complex deal yesterday, advising a well-known bank on an investment in a very promising IT project. Probably they were a little stressed, I guess. My dad likes good wine. Well, only after the job's successfully completed. It's all right, my love. I understand, Marina lied. Your parents are really great. They're so, expressive. Sergio kissed his beloved and smiled. As charming as always. Don't worry about anything. They like you very much. I know that for sure. Sergio left, and Marina tried to analyze all the facts. Although she was not entirely sure about Irene Carmona. Was this woman the real mother of her fiancé? At the same time, everything was perfectly clear to her about Valerio Carmona. The man was a pauper. A poor homeless man who had simply been bathed, shaved, dressed, and brought to her house for some incomprehensible purpose. But why did Sergio make this masquerade? What was the point of it? The girl already loved him and was ready to accept him as he was, even if he didn't have rich parents. And his last part about the deal and consulting the bank looked ridiculous. People like Irene and Valerio Carmona could not be financiers. Even Marina, who had only a high school education, understood that. The girl concluded that her fiancé had not told her a lot of things and therefore was determined to find out the truth at any cost. The next day, Marina had the day off. She and Sergio had arranged to meet in the evening to go to the city park to relax together. There would be a beautiful lantern show, and Marina really wanted to go there that night. When the young people had chosen the best places to watch the show, Marina decided not to waste time and asked her beloved about what had happened that night when they had a family dinner together. "Sergio, I'm sorry, I really don't feel comfortable asking you this, but I have to do it anyway. Tell me, please, why did your father have to wear that stupid wig? You could see it didn't fit him. It didn't suit him at all." Surprisingly, Sergio took the question calmly. He just filled his chest with air before answering. "I understand, my love. Probably it was a little confusing for you, but that's my daddy's inferiority complex. There's nothing we can do about it. You know, he was a singer when he was young. He managed to travel all over the country with his songs. Back then, a lot of people knew him as a young performer with very thick, beautiful hair. He even had a suitable nickname, Leon Valerio." "Really?" Marina asked him surprisingly. "Well, I didn't know. That's very interesting." "Yes," the boy sighed. "There were almost legends about his hair back then, what he used to wash it to make it so curly and silky, how he took care of it. You know, the girls also paid attention to my father, so he tried to look impeccable. But that success didn't last long." "What happened?" the girl asked with genuine excitement. "I don't know exactly," Sergio answered her slowly, carefully choosing the words. "My father always said that it was as if he had been jinxed. When he turned 30, his hair began to fall out drastically, and very quickly there was no trace of his former hair. But I assumed that this is due to genetics. And then he had a stressful job. Constant stress caused by monetary transactions, calculating risks. I guess it all played a part, too. So at home, Dad doesn't wear a wig. Fortunately, my mom always loved him regardless of whether he had hair or not. But he doesn't feel comfortable without his wig in front of strangers. I actually argued with him all night because of this. I didn't want him to wear that stupid wig either. But my father was always stubborn. If he made up his mind to do so, no one can talk him out of it. He said, 'Am I going to meet my future daughter-in-law without my hair? That's not very nice. Así es como fue.'" Marina was no longer able to distinguish between truth and lies. Her fiancé had explained everything to her in such a good and logical way that now the girl began to doubt whether Sergio's father and that homeless man were the same person or not. He shouldn't have worried so much. "I don't care what your father looks like at all," Marina replied in an apologetic tone. "I'm sorry for being so rude, Sergio. I asked about it for a reason, you see," and she told him about her recent encounter with Valerio Carmona. In response, the young man only laughed. He laughed loudly and then pretended that he didn't understand what she was talking about. "Well, you really surprised me. My father is a homeless man? How could you think of such nonsense? Of course, you're mistaken, darling. You're working 10 hours on your feet, and it's a little stuffy indoors. You can imagine a lot more than that at the end of the day in that environment." After that, Marina tried to change the subject. She smiled and offered to buy them some ice cream so that it would be even more interesting to watch the colored lights of the lanterns around them. When the man went to buy a cold dessert, the girl started to think. Anything could happen, and she could be mistaken, mixing someone up, but not this time. Marina was 100% sure of her conclusions, and she didn't understand why her fiancé was lying to her. At the same time, she didn't want to quarrel with her beloved. Still, she had the most delicate, deep feelings for him, so she had to pretend that she believed him and that everything between them was as good as before. For the next few weeks, Marina wandered around the poorest districts of the city after work, hoping to meet the homeless man who had played the role of the financier so deftly. The girl made her way around dozens of basements and empty buildings and even visited several heating mains. Finally, fortune smiled at her. It took her a lot of effort to find a group of homeless people, and she found her new friend among them. Valerio Carmona was sitting next to un gran barrel oxidado, de los que los jardineros utilizan en primavera para quemar la basura, and was clearly enjoying the warm flames emanating from the fire. Upon seeing Marina, the rest of the homeless people immediately began to look at her unkindly. What does this city madam want here? But the future cook wasn't frightened. When she was in high school, she saw all kinds of people who had even visited her house, so she wasn't afraid of beggars. Good evening, Valerio Carmona, Marina said as she approached the old man. You don't look so good today. The beggar looked at her frightened and wanted to leave immediately, but she stopped him. She took the man by the sleeve and asked him a question, looking straight into his eyes. Wait, please. I won't hurt you. I just want to know the truth. Why did you make this masquerade? Are you really Sergio's father? The homeless man struggled to free himself from the girl's grasp and then quickly muttered in a hoarse voice, You must be mistaken, young lady. I'm not the one you're looking for. Marina shook her head. But you do remember me, I can see that. What happened to you? Please, try to understand me. Even if you're an alcoholic and you've lost everything, I don't blame you. My parents were alcoholics and died of alcohol poisoning. But I loved them anyway. I only blame myself for not saving them. Marina got tired of holding the homeless man who still tried to free himself and let go of the sleeve of his old shabby coat. At the same second, large tears glistened on her face. Why are you doing this to me? I just want to understand. Marina covered her face with her hands and wept silently. Vagabundo, who had managed to run pretty far from the girl, suddenly stopped when he heard her last words. He turned around after a moment, and when he saw that the girl was shuddering with sobs and silent crying, he went back with a shuffling gait. Since their last meeting, Valerio began to limp noticeably worse, falling back on his left leg as he walked. Calm down, child. Your fiancé is not my son. He's a fraud and a liar. See how I walk now? He did it to me. He was so angry that night when we left your house. He was like a rabid dog, so he beat me up on the way back, in the middle of the road. Jesus. That can't be true. Marina couldn't believe that. I have no reason to lie to you. He stood his ground and then said, But why is he doing all this? She asked, and the beggar shook his hands. How do I know? I wasn't looking for any relatives. He found me himself at the market. Me and Sergio has peser por mi padre delante de mi novia, te pegar bien. He took me to the baths, to the barber. He even made me put on this fake hair. But in the end, he didn't even pay me. He said I didn't play my part properly. Not convincing. Un momento, lo detuvo Marina. ¿Quieres decir que Irene Carmona tampoco? Yes, the beggar assured her. She is one of us. Irene Lapita. That is her real name. Sometimes she digs up graves and then sells everything she finds. That's why she has that nickname. Marina felt unwell. The girl began to tremble and her hands turned cold. My God, how do you live here? She asked the homeless man with a trembling voice. He just sat down on an old box, constantly groaning. Well, what else can we do? I didn't always live on the street. People can get into different situations. I wasn't even on the land for a long time. I'm a sailor. I spent 18 years working on a merchant ship. I always wanted to make more money to send to my wife and daughter. For my daughter's education and a beautiful life for my wife. And then we got caught in a storm. That was a rough moment for everybody. But it hit me hard. They said I was lucky to be alive. It could be worse. In short, they dismissed me like I'm a faulty navigator. They sent me home. At this point, Valerio paused for a second and quietly wiped a tear from his face. I returned home, and there everything was classic. My wife had been living with her lover for a couple of years already, and my daughter didn't even want to know me. She said, "Why do we need an old disabled man with no money?" So I had to go from being a sea wolf to a land rat. "Forgive me, I should not have attacked you like that," Marina said sympathetically. "Here, take it. I really do not have much money, but it should be enough to sleep somewhere and eat." The old sailor did not refuse and thanked her heartily. "You are a good person, Marina. I wish I could introduce you to my daughter. She could learn a lot from you." On the way home, Marina couldn't stop wondering what was going on in her life right now. And why had her fiancé organized this whole circus? It was hard for the girl to imagine that Sergio could beat up a poor, innocent old man. On the other hand, she had seen the way his face had changed during dinner. What if the beggar had accidentally hurt his leg himself and decided to blame it on Sergio? What if her beloved was simply ashamed to confess to her that he is an orphan? One thing is clear, he has no multimillionaire parents. Apparently, Sergio just couldn't tell her the whole truth. That's why he made up this whole show with fake relatives. Marina didn't want to escalate the situation because she still loved Sergio and wanted to marry him. No matter how strange this whole story was, she decided not to rush and try to figure it all out. So she called her friend, T, and asked her to meet at a cafe the next day. "My friends have asked me to do all sorts of things, but no one ever asked me to follow a fiancé. That never happened to me before." T sat with a cup of coffee in her hands and stared at Marina with a mix of curiosity and surprise. "Please, T, I really need your help," she urged her friend. "If Sergio finds out that I'm following him, then everything will only get more confusing. He doesn't tell me anything and blatantly lies. I just don't know what to do." Okay, her friend calmed her down. "It's just some kind of unexpected request. Marina, do you realize that we might find out something about him that you wouldn't like? What will you do then?" Her friend thought for a second, and then she shrugged and just answered, "I don't know. The only thing I'm absolutely sure of is that my fiancé is hiding something from me, and I won't be able to sleep peacefully until I find out what it is." The girls agreed to meet at the same place in a week, and when they finally met again, T was darker than a storm cloud. "Alas, Marina, I don't have any good news, sorry." T went straight to the point. "Sergio is cheating on you." "What?" Marina couldn't believe her ears, but she trusted T more than she trusted herself. After all, they had known each other since the first grade. "Yes, at first I thought I was mistaken too, but then you sent me his photo and I understood. There can be no mistake. Your Sergio rents a fancy car every other day and goes to a hotel with this hottie." T took a large modern smartphone out of her purse and showed Marina some photos that she had secretly taken in the hotel restaurant and from a reliable place across the street. T had to spend several hours in the cafe, waiting for the couple to leave their love nest. Marina looked at the pictures and felt nausea coming to her throat. It was really a picture of her Sergio. Only in an expensive Mercedes and in the company of a gorgeous girl with long golden hair flowing down her slender back like a waterfall. She felt a wave of panic was about to overtake her. Lord, what a gross thing. Marina returned the phone to her friend. "Delete it all, please. I have no strength to look at it." "Marina, don't worry," T tried to comfort her, deleting the compromising photos at the same time. So, Sergio turned out to be a traitor. But it's not the end of the world. Most men cheat on their wives. You will definitely meet a man 1,000 times better than Sergio. And this bastard. Leave him, he doesn't deserve you. Out of sight, out of heart. No, T, you don't understand. But I don't understand either. Why would he want to build a relationship with me if he had someone better than me? He sincerely told me that the only person he saw as his future wife was me, so what was the point of it all? Then T had a genius idea. Look, girl, maybe he wants something else from you. Maybe he's just a crook. Oh, come on, Marina immediately rejected the idea. What could he possibly want from me? I have nothing I've been poor since I was a child. What about your house? T asked. What about the house? The house is just an old stone box with 4 walls and a roof that leaks every spring. It needs to be repaired. Dubious benefit for a man who can afford to rent a Mercedes. Well, yes, that's right. T thought about it and then suddenly suggested. Listen, let's tell Timoteo about it. He's a smart guy, even though those jocks from his department are always trying to tease him. Everybody at the police station knows that if it weren't for my brother, half the cases would still be unsolved. After all, using your head is not like using a gun recklessly. T referred to her twin brother, Timoteo. The man had impressive analytical skills and, in addition, always dreamed of helping people. Not surprisingly, after graduating from police school, he immediately got a job as an investigator at the local police station. However, many of his more successful colleagues were simply jealous of the young investigator's intellectual abilities, so they purposely belittled his dignity, only allowing him to take on the most minor cases and using him as a consultant. Timoteo realized that he had become an outcast in the company of far more brutal colleagues who used to use violence rather than intelligence. However, T's brother was not discouraged and hoped to get such a case that would help him not only to attract the attention of his chiefs, but also to prove to his partners that he was also a worthy professional. Even if he is not as physically developed as they are. Do you think your brother can help me? Marina looked skeptically at her friend and asked again. But I should probably file a report. Won't we distract him from other important duties? T only waved her hand and laughed softly. Believe me, he'll thank you for bringing him such an interesting case. And you don't have to worry about bureaucracy. I'll let him know it's a personal request. The investigation will be conducted unofficially. After all, I'm a cop's sister. That same evening T called her brother and asked him to meet her friend. When the girl told the young investigator everything, he promised her that he would definitely find out the truth. There is something in your story that makes me curious, Marina. Believe me, I will do my best to find out what made your fiancé do this. As the sister asked, only Timoteo was involved in the Vasquez case. No one from law enforcement ever found out about it. Besides, the man was sure that there was something more than the whims of the emotionally unstable Sergio. Timoteo began to search for information, looking closely at every detail. At that moment he was like a hunting dog who had finally found the right trail. It was not easy to get the necessary information, but Timoteo was a man of the old school and was not afraid to get dirty in the mud of the rural asylums, was not afraid of the short interviews with many witnesses and just people who might know something about Marina's and her family's past. Finally, 3 weeks later, Timoteo called and offered to meet again, telling that he had found very interesting information. On the phone, the investigator did not specify that this information shocked him. That was something he never expected to find out. Good morning, Marina Vasquez, Timoteo greeted her. I'm glad you could come so quickly. I took the day off today, she replied. You were not in contact with your fiancé while the investigation was going on, as I asked, right? Right, she answered cautiously. She found this request strange, but Timoteo insisted that she try to keep some distance from Sergio so that he could not influence her in any way during this time. Otherwise, she would not be able to properly assess the facts that the investigator was about to give her. All right, Timoteo nodded. Believe me, I didn't ask you to do this for nothing. The fact is that I managed to find out something about your real parents. Real parents? Marina didn't understand. Wait. I know everything about my family. Prudencia and Nicholas Vasquez are miserable people, but there's something you don't know, the young policeman told her. Prudencia Vasquez and Nicholas Vasquez did raise you most of your life. But you got to them when you were already 1 year old. Marina felt her blood pressure drop drastically. Her hands turned cold in an instant, and there was an ominous ringing in her ears. And? Was all she could utter. Timoteo took a large sip of hot tea before continuing. The fact is that the Vasquez family adopted you. The investigator took out copies of some documents from a beautiful leather folder and put them in front of a shocked Marina. You were just an addition to the house where you now live, if I may say so. Marina tried to read the papers, but the lines in front of her eyes began to dance. She could not understand a word because of the excitement. I don't understand anything, she said frankly. Who could have done this to me? Timoteo smirked softly. A professional passion came into play in him. And this is where it gets interesting. The man took something else out of his bag, and it was carefully wrapped in plastic. It turned out to be Marina's real birth certificate. Except her parents' names were completely different. Your real mother and father are Ella and Javier Pascual. They were former successful entrepreneurs. Why former? Marina asked again. Have they gone bankrupt? Why did they give me away? Why didn't they give me to the orphanage, but straight to Bosques, if they knew they drank so much? Marina was ready to flood Timoteo with questions, but he raised his hands in a pleading gesture. Wait, Marina Bosques, no rush, calm down. Your parents, Ella and Javier, died when you were 1 year old. They died in a terrible car accident. They were returning from an important business meeting, and the highway was covered in ice that night, so much so that their driver simply failed to control the car. The investigation decided that it had been an accident. Marina was silent and thoughtful for a minute. She didn't have time to know her real parents and lost them. Now the girl felt somewhat bitter. So, then, who? She did not finish the obvious question. It was a so-called friend of the Pascual family, someone named Rubalcaba, who did it. Xavi Rubalcaba. Timoteo pulled some old photographs out of the folder again. They were pictures of her real parents. Young, happy with little Marina in their arms. They were smiling into the camera. The tall, dark-haired man, whose face seemed familiar to Marina for some reason, was always present in the photos. Rubalcaba became your legal guardian almost as soon as the Pascual couple died. He volunteered to shelter you. How noble, Marina said involuntarily. That's what I thought at first, the investigator said. But alas, it turned out to be only a mask, a cover for his real intentions. And his true interest in the case of your adoption was quite simple and selfish. A friend of your parents expected to get all their money, as the sole guardian of their minor daughter. Marina felt deeply disappointed. Apparently, it was reflected in her face, because Timoteo said with sincere sympathy, I understand that this is unpleasant for you to hear. But Rubalcaba really expected to have access to a huge fortune, and you were nothing more than a key for him. Except that he was wrong. The only thing he got was a huge 4-story mansion in an upscale residential community. Everything else was in your name. Literally everything. But I had never heard of any money. The girl shook her head. Even if I was supposed to get an inheritance, Bosquez's parents never talked about it. They never said anything at all. They just drank alcohol. They would never have told you that. I mean, they would have lost the only place they had, your house, the policeman revealed. It was the Pascual family's second house, which they planned to renovate someday, and then rent out to individuals. Rubalcaba knew about the house, as well as he knew that you could only get money when you turned 18. Until then, all your parents' accounts were blocked in a special safe deposit box, and the code and details of the account itself are still hidden somewhere. Marina's head was spinning from what she heard. How could it be? So it turns out that Rubalcaba never received the money? Marina asked. Exactly, Timoteo answered. When Rubalcaba had not received a penny from his friends, he decided there was no point in supporting you. But he didn't want to leave you alone, so he found the Bosques couple in the village where the house was situated. They hadn't been drinking so much at the time and were perfectly capable of taking care of a baby, especially since he had promised them a free stay in this house. In other words, he just got rid of me, Marina concluded. Well, he expected that they would take care of you while he searched your ancestral mansion for hidden documents. A maid who used to work for the Pascual family confirmed that Rubalcaba cracked every safe in the house. However, he never found anything. In the end, he was left with only that mansion and faint hopes of getting rich. Eventually, he accepted it and stopped looking for the hidden treasure. A year ago, your first guardian died. Marina sighed deeply. That's the story, she said thoughtfully. I can't believe it. If my real parents had not died, I could have had a completely different life now. The girl looked out the window, feeling her soul gradually flooded with endless regrets. After a second, Marina pulled herself together and looked at the policeman again. Well, what does Sergio have to do with this? You said you found out something about him, too. Timoteo lowered his eyes and hesitated a little as if he was uncomfortable saying the following words. Yes. The fact is that Rubalcaba has a son. Tell me, have you ever wondered about your fiancé's family, or at least about his last name? After all, you've been dating for a long time, haven't you? Marina was a little confused. That's why I hired you, because I wanted to find out everything. All he said was his last name, Carmona. And he told me about his parents, who came from a family of financiers. And then, Marina stopped talking. Timoteo realized that she understood what he was going to say. He didn't want to torture her by waiting and confirmed her fears. Xavi Rubalcaba's son's name is Sergio. Probably he deliberately used a different last name. He was afraid you might get suspicious. That's why he made up that story about rich parents, so that you would believe him for sure. He does have some money, but not as much as he says he has. Marina didn't want to believe that the man she loved was using her only for profit. But the facts were saying the opposite. The girl wanted to be sure of her fiancé's intentions, and she asked a young policeman to help her. Timoteo agreed. He wanted to help Marina not only to save her inheritance, but also to protect her from possible danger. At the end of the week, Marina called Sergio, and, apologizing to him for being away for so long, invited him to her house on Saturday. He said he would come, though Marina could tell from his voice that he was extremely unhappy with his fiancé's sudden coldness. On the appointed day, the girl met the young cheater in a new cream-colored silk dress and with an elegant haircut. Marina said she bought this dress for him. Wow, you look so beautiful today, Sergio admired as he handed his beloved a lush bouquet of peonies. I wonder if something special happened that I should know about, or are you just trying to apologize for being away? Trying to apologize. I hope I'm good at it. Marina flirted with him while kissing the guy and loosening the tight knot on his tie. I imagined that I might lose you because of my own stupidity. And I got so scared. Come on. She pulled him with her. There's a surprise for you in the living room. Sergio, relaxed by such an unexpected romantic atmosphere, easily followed Marina. However, as soon as he stepped into the wide, bright room, he froze in place. The homeless man, Valerio, who previously pretended to be his father, was sitting in an old rocking chair right in front of the large dining table. What the hell is this? Sergio's lips turned white with tension. What is this nonsense? Marina immediately made innocent eyes. What do you mean, my love? Look, your father and I have already managed to become friends. I invited him for a cup of tea so we can spend time together because last time it didn't work out so well. He told me so many interesting things about you. Do you want to hear what I found out? Marina found the old beggar and invited him to her house, not only because it was part of her and Timoteo's plan, but because the old sailor's life was really difficult and Marina felt really sorry for him at that dump. So she suggested that the old man move into her house, at least for a while. She really wanted Valerio to live like a human being in his old age. Sergio immediately realized that he was exposed and threw off his mask of a caring fiancé. What a fool! He said angrily and tried to run outside, but the way was blocked by a policeman hiding in the next room. Freeze, Rubalcaba. Sergeant Solar, police. You are under arrest for suspicion of fraud. We know that you have decided to gain the trust of Miss Vasquez. Tell us, what did you intend to do next? Kill her? Sergio, to the surprise of Timoteo and Marina, only laughed sarcastically. Kill? Are you serious? What do I need it for? I had to find the stash. What? Marina looked at him questioningly. The stash, again? Oh. So you already know. Sergio looked at the policeman, then at Marina, and at the policeman again, and then he said, well, then you know I couldn't just leave it as it was. My father told me before he died that the Pasquale family hid the safe deposit box code somewhere, and I knew right away that I had to finish the job. He was the one who was supposed to get the whole inheritance, not you. Sergio looked contemptuously at Marina. My father worked for those rich freaks all his life. He worked on all their deals and kissed every potential client's ass just so they choose Pasquale and not foreign competitors. And then, that accident. It's sad, but fate decided that your parents were not destined to live long in this world. But my father needed some money to support you and to continue running the company. As far as I know, Xavi Rubalcaba had enough money to keep Pasquale's company from falling into the economic abyss. And on top of everything else, the company itself had a dedicated account for the case of force majeure. Timoteo interrupted Sergio's speech. I'm afraid that the only motives that you and your late father had were envy and greed, rather than a noble desire to save the company. In that case, he wouldn't leave a year-old girl in the hands of a drunken outcast. What do you know about this life? Sergio shouted at him. Dad said the code to the safe deposit box had to be here, in this house. If it wasn't in the big mansion, it had to be here, waiting for him. But I had to do everything in a way that this dumbass wouldn't suspect anything. Marina felt her cheeks flush with righteous anger and indignation. So I had to come up with all this nonsense with the wedding and meeting the parents. Where else was I supposed to find the right people? A homeless person is a relatively cheap currency these days. What a bastard you are, Sergio. Marina said angrily, trying to burn him with her eyes. I thought we had real feelings, a real relationship. By the way, I also know about your mistress. So it wouldn't have worked out anyway. You should be more careful when wooing a rich bride. You should have kept your adventures away from prying eyes. At that moment, the sirens were heard outside. Timoteo had already called for backup, and a few minutes later, several more policemen entered the house. If it hadn't been for that bum, I would have made it. He cursed at the homeless man as they handcuffed him. And you, keep selling your cupcakes. They're all bland anyway. Just like you. As a farewell, Sergio sent the girl an air kiss, but he did it so ugly and vulgar that Marina could barely hold back tears of hurt and humiliation. Don't worry, Timoteo tried to comfort her. Now he won't try cupcakes for a long time. Not yours, not anyone else's. He'll go to jail for about 7 years. Then Timoteo's face lit up with a sly smile. Marina, do you want to try to find the stash? Maybe there is something important. It will also help to take your mind off of everything that has happened. Do you think? The girl looked at him with tear-damp eyes. The man shrugged and then began to search. Marina actively helped the policeman, and after a few hours they found a small hidden niche in the wall, which was hidden in one of the rooms on the second floor. Let's see what's in here, Timoteo said, pulling out the contents of the stash in front of an astonished Marina. A moment later, he handed the girl an envelope and a small wooden box. It was a miracle that it hadn't been damaged by time. The excellent varnish must have saved it. There was a small note in the box, rolled up 4 times, which contained the combination to the safety deposit box in the bank, written in indelible ink. In the letter, the parents lamented that they got so little time to spend with their daughter. The Pasquale couple had already had a premonition of their doom, and so they willed their entire fortune in the name of their little daughter. So an ordinary cupcake clerk, who dreamed of becoming a pastry chef, turned out to be a real millionaire, and she didn't know about it for 20 years of her life. The first thing Marina did was what she had dreamed of for so long. She did a major renovation of the house. Valerio helped her as much as he could. The girl let him live in her house. And now the old sailor finally had a real home. Marina became like a daughter to him, especially since she began dating Timoteo, and the ex-homeless man really liked and respected him. The policeman was promoted for brilliantly solving the Pasquale family case, and the whole department began to really respect him. In contrast to Sergio, he was not pursuing the benefits of the relationship with Marina, but sincerely loved and respected the girl, and she responded to him with mutual love and the warmth of her heart. One day, when Timoteo arrived at the scene of the crime, he found there a small basket. To his surprise, there was a little baby inside. The boy was sleeping peacefully, sucking his thumb. Someone left here the baby before the police arrived. This was the first time Timoteo had encountered something like this, and he didn't know what to do. The policeman didn't want to put the boy in an orphanage, so after talking with his fiancé, he decided to take the baby home. Marina didn't mind, especially since she already wanted to be a mother and was just planning a pregnancy after the wedding. But since it happened, why not? The girl didn't want this baby to repeat her fate. What if the baby ends up in a bad family if they don't adopt him now? Marina and Timoteo had a great wedding. The old sailor had a lot of fun. And right after that, they adopted a little foundling and named him Javier, after Marina's biological father. Valerio was happy to try on the role of grandfather and help the young parents in every way he could. Now there was children's laughter in the family, and everyone would surely have a happy future.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.